The motel key felt different in my hand that Tuesday morning. Lighter, wrong. I stood in the parking lot of the Desert Rose Inn, 17 miles outside Carson City, holding a plastic room key and a business card for Dr. Marcus Chen's Memory Wellness Center. My son Jeffrey had driven me here 3 days ago, his voice patient and concerned in that new way that had started 6 months back. Just for the evaluation, Mom. Dr. Chen is the best. We need to know you're okay. The evaluation had taken 40 minutes. Dr. Chen had asked me to remember 3 words. Draw a clock. Count backward from 100 by 7s. I'd done it all correctly, watching his expression shift from clinical to puzzled to slightly uncomfortable. At the end, he'd closed his folder and said something I didn't quite catch, but I'd seen him shake his head when Jeffrey asked him something in the hallway. That was 3 days ago. Jeffrey hadn't come back. I'd called his cell phone 27 times. It went straight to voicemail. I'd called my daughter-in-law, Diane. Same. I'd even tried my granddaughter Emma's number, the one I'd written carefully in my address book. Disconnected. This morning, the motel manager had knocked on my door at 7 a.m. Mrs. Whitmore, you were supposed to check out yesterday. Your card was declined. My card. The one Jeffrey had taken from my purse to update the billing address. I'd paid the manager with the emergency $50 bill I kept in my shoe, the one my mother had taught me to hide when I was 16. Then I'd packed my overnight bag, the small one, because Jeffrey had said we'd just be gone for the afternoon, and called a cab with the last of my cash. Take me home, please. 28847 Sycamore Drive. The house I'd lived in for 42 years. The house Robert and I had bought when Jeffrey was 2 and Sarah was still a dream we whispered about in bed at night. The house where I'd planted every rose bush in the front yard, where I'd refinished the hardwood floors on my hands and knees, where I'd watched my children grow and my husband die and my hair turn from black to silver. The cab driver helped me with my bag. I tipped him with the 3 crumpled dollar bills at the bottom of my purse. My hand trembled when I slid the key into the lock. It didn't turn. I tried again, jiggling it the way you do with old locks that stick in the humidity. Nothing. I crouched down, looked at the keyhole. Something was different, newer, shinier. Excuse me? I turned. My neighbour, Patricia Chen, stood on her front step across the street, holding a watering can. We'd been neighbours for 20 years. She'd brought me casseroles after Robert died. I'd watched her grandchildren every Tuesday for 3 summers. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Patricia, my key doesn't work. Something's wrong with the lock. She set down the watering can slowly, the way you move around something unpredictable. Mrs. Whitmore, didn't they tell you? Your son said you'd moved. To that nice assisted living place in Reno. He's been showing the house to buyers. The words came at me from very far away. Moved, assisted living, buyers. I haven't moved anywhere, I said. My voice sounded strange, hollow. This is my house. Patricia's expression shifted from confusion to pity, and pity was worse than anything else she could have given me. "Oh, honey, maybe you should call your son. He said you'd been having memory problems, that you needed more care." Memory problems. I looked down at my hands. 74 years old. Liver spots. Wedding ring still there, though Robert had been gone 8 years. Hands that remembered how to make pie crust and change a tire and hold a dying man gently while he took his last breath. Hands that were shaking. "Thank you, Patricia," I said quietly. Then I picked up my overnight bag and walked back toward the street. I didn't cry, not then. Crying was something you did when you had time and space and permission to fall apart. I had none of those things. What I had was this. I was 74 years old, locked out of my own house, with $8 in my purse, no phone, no identification, and a son who had apparently told the neighbours I'd lost my mind. The sun was hot on my shoulders. My bag was heavy. The street looked the same as it always had. The oak tree Robert and I had planted the year Geoffrey was born, the crack in the sidewalk from the earthquake in '89, the mailbox with my name still on it in fading letters. But I couldn't open my own front door. I stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of the bag in my hand, the weight of 74 years pressing down on my spine. Then I turned left instead of right, away from the bus stop, toward downtown. I had no money for a bus anyway, and I was done being moved, managed, and erased. The Carson City Women's Shelter smelled like industrial detergent and exhaustion. I'd walked for an hour before I found it, asking directions twice from people who looked past me the way you look past street signs you've seen too many times to notice. The intake coordinator was a woman named Brenda, with tired eyes and quick hands, who didn't ask why I was there, only how long I'd need to stay. One night, I said, maybe 2. She gave me a bed number and a towel. The sheets were thin but clean. The woman in the next cot was younger than my daughter would have been. Sarah had died at 16 months, meningitis, 37 years ago, but I still thought of her in present tense sometimes. This girl had a black eye going green at the edges and didn't look at anyone. I lay on the cot and stared at the ceiling and made lists in my head. What I knew. My house key didn't work. The locks had been changed. Geoffrey had told the neighbours I'd moved to assisted living. He had my credit card, my phone, my purse with my driver's licence and insurance cards, and the photo of Robert that I'd carried for 8 years. What I didn't know, how long he'd been planning this, whether Diane was helping him, if my granddaughter Emma knew what he'd told the bank, whether I had any money left. What I needed: identification, money, a lawyer, proof. The lights went out at 10. Someone coughed in the darkness. Someone else cried quietly, the sound muffled in a pillow. I closed my eyes and thought about Robert. Not the Robert from the end, all hollowed out by the cancer. but the Robert from the beginning. 23 years old, working construction, coming home with plaster dust in his hair and his pay envelope folded in his pocket. We'd been so careful with money. We'd saved, we'd planned. Robert's life insurance had paid off the house. My teacher's pension wasn't much, but it was steady. I'd put money away. I'd been responsible, and Geoffrey had taken it. Not all at once, that would have been too obvious. He'd started 2 years ago after Diane lost her job. "Mum, can you help with Emma's tuition, just this semester?" Then it was the mortgage, the car payment, the medical bills that insurance wouldn't cover. Each time a little more. Each time with that new tone in his voice, patient and concerned. Like I was the one who didn't understand how money worked. 6 months ago, he'd suggested I add him to my bank account just in case something happens. I'd said no. He'd looked hurt, and I'd felt guilty. And 3 weeks later, he'd shown up with paperwork from my bank that he said I'd signed. I didn't remember signing it. I'd asked to see the papers again. He'd said they were filed at the bank, nothing to worry about. I hadn't worried. That was my mistake. I'd trusted my son. The girl in the next cot made a sound in her sleep, something between a whimper and a word. I turned toward the wall. The paint was institutional beige. Someone had scratched something into it, letters I couldn't make out in the dark. When Robert was dying, he'd made me promise something. We'd been married 41 years and he'd never asked me to do much, but 2 days before he died, he'd taken my hand with his thin, cold fingers and said, "Don't let anyone make you small." I'd promised. Then I'd spent 8 years getting smaller and smaller, taking up less space, needing less, asking for less, until I was barely there at all. Just a function. A grandmother who babysat, a mother who loaned money, a widow who didn't want to be a burden. I'd let Geoffrey make me invisible, but I was still here. In the morning, I stood in the shelter's shower with water that went from scalding to cold without warning, and I made a decision. Not a dramatic one, not a speech, just a quiet choice in a cinder block bathroom with a cracked mirror. I was 74 years old. I'd raised 2 children and buried one. I'd taught 4th grade for 32 years. I'd held my husband's hand while he died and gotten up the next morning and made coffee and kept going, because that's what you did. I'd survived the death of my child, the death of my husband, and 60 years of being told that women should be nice and grateful and small. I could survive my son. After the shower, I borrowed a phone book from Brenda and wrote down 3 addresses on the back of a grocery receipt. Then I walked to the public library, 5 blocks away, and used their computer to print out my bank statements from my online account. The password still worked. Geoffrey hadn't thought to change it. The numbers on the screen confirmed what I'd already known but hadn't let myself see. My savings account had been empty for 4 months. The checking account showed transfers every week. Out, out, out. The last one was dated 2 days ago, the day Geoffrey had left me at the motel, he'd withdrawn $4,000. I printed everything, 6 months of statements. Then I searched for elder abuse attorney Carson City and printed that too. The librarian watched me from behind the desk, expression neutral. I probably looked like exactly what I was, an old woman with no purse, no phone, wrinkled clothes and desperate eyes, printing evidence of her own erasure. I didn't care anymore what I looked like. I gathered my papers, folded them carefully and tucked them inside my blouse. Then I walked back to the shelter and asked Brenda if I could stay another night. "Of course, hun," she said. Then, quieter. "You okay?" I looked at her. This stranger who'd given me a bed when my own son had left me in a motel. "No," I said, "but I will be." The Bank of Carson City branch on Stewart Street had been my bank for 42 years. I'd opened my first account there when Geoffrey was 2, depositing my teacher's salary every 2 weeks, saving for emergencies that mostly never came. The emergency had come now. The bank manager's name was Gloria Hernandez. I didn't know her, she'd started after Robert died, but she looked up when I walked in and something in her expression shifted when she saw me. Recognition, not of me, but of what I was. A dishevelled elderly woman with wild eyes and determination. "I need to see my accounts," I said, "all of them." She led me to a small glass office. The chair was too soft, and I sat carefully, my back straight. I'd learned long ago that if you slouched, people assumed you were weak. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said, pulling up my accounts on her computer, "I see you have a joint account with Geoffrey Whitmore. He was here on Monday." Monday. The day he'd left me at the motel. What did he do? Gloria's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. "I can't discuss. He's stolen my money," I said quietly. "I was abandoned in a motel with no identification, no credit cards, and $8. My house locks have been changed. I'm staying in a women's shelter. I need to know what he did." The silence in the glass office had texture, weight. Gloria looked at me for a long moment. Then she turned her screen so I could see it. He transferred the remaining balance to an account in his name only. Then he closed the joint account. Then, she scrolled, "Then he withdrew $48,000 from your savings account. He presented a power of attorney document." The floor tilted slightly. $48,000. Everything Robert and I had saved, everything I'd put aside for the years when I'd be too old to work, too tired to fight. Gone. "I never signed a power of attorney," I said. The document appeared valid. It had a notary seal. I never signed it. Gloria's expression was careful, professional, but something flickered behind her eyes. She'd seen this before. Maybe not in this branch, but somewhere, some other elderly person, some other missing money. "Mrs. Whitmore, if you believe the power of attorney is fraudulent, you need to file a police report. And you'll need to freeze all your accounts immediately. Do you have identification?" "No." He took my purse. Then we'll need to verify your identity through other means. I'll need to ask you some security questions. She asked me my mother's maiden name, the street I grew up on, the name of my first pet. I answered them all correctly because these weren't things Geoffrey could steal. These were mine, sewn into my memory like the quilt my grandmother had made. Each patch, a piece of my history that no one could take. 20 minutes later, every account was frozen. He can't access anything now, Gloria said. But Mrs. Whitmore, the money he already withdrew, I know. I stood up. My knees ached, but I didn't show it. Can you tell me which notary verified that power of attorney? She checked the document. Grace Chen. Her office is on Carson Street. Grace Chen, I knew that name. She'd been at Robert's funeral, standing in the back. She'd notarized our will 15 years ago, seated at our kitchen table, drinking tea from my grandmother's china. Outside the bank, the June heat pressed down like a hand. I walked 3 blocks to Carson Street, the printed bank statements folded inside my blouse against my skin. Evidence, proof, the beginning of my case. Grace Chen's office was above a dry cleaner. The stairs were steep, and I took them slowly, my hand on the railing. At the top, I pushed open a door with frosted glass. Grace was 78, older than me, with silver hair cut short and sharp eyes behind reading glasses. She looked up from her desk and her face went very still. "Margaret," she said. It wasn't a question. "Grace." I walked to her desk and placed the bank printouts in front of her. "My son presented you with a power of attorney document 2 weeks ago. You notarized it. I never signed it." She picked up the papers slowly, adjusted her glasses and read. Then she opened a filing cabinet, found a folder and pulled out a copy of the power of attorney. She set it next to my bank statements. Her hands were shaking. "Margaret, I swear to you he came in with this document. He said you were having memory issues, that you'd signed it at home but forgotten. The signature looked right. May I see it?" She turned it toward me. My signature was there at the bottom. Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. The loops of the M and W, the careful crossbar on the T. It looked exactly like my signature, but I'd never seen this document before in my life. "That's not my signature," I said. Grace pulled off her glasses. "Margaret, it's forged. Look at the date, June 2nd. On June 2nd, I was at my granddaughter's piano recital. I didn't sign anything. And Grace, you know me. You've known me for 15 years. Do I seem like someone with memory problems?" She studied my face. Then she pulled out another document, our will from 15 years ago. She set the signatures side by side. The differences were tiny. The angle of the W slightly off, the spacing between the letters in Eleanor too wide, the pressure of the pen inconsistent. "Oh, God," Grace whispered. "Margaret, I'm so sorry. I should have verified. It's not your fault. He lied to you." I picked up both documents. "But I need you to testify that you never watched me sign this, that he brought it to you already signed. Can you do that?" She nodded. Then she did something I didn't expect. She opened her desk drawer and pulled out a business card. "This is my attorney. Tell her I sent you. She specializes in elder abuse cases." The card was cream-colored, expensive stock. Catherine Price, attorney at law. Elder law and advocacy. "I can't afford. She does pro bono work. Tell her everything. Take this." Grace pulled out her phone and snapped photos of both signatures. "I'm emailing these to you now. What's your email?" "I don't have my phone. Give me an address. I'll print them and make copies for you now." I gave her my email address, the one I'd set up 10 years ago when the school district went digital. Grace printed 4 copies of everything: the forged signature, my real signature, the notarization records. She pressed them into my hands. "Margaret, I'm testifying. Whatever you need. Robert was a good man. This is theft." I nodded. The word felt too small for what this was. Theft was taking something from a stranger. This was my son taking my life. Outside, the afternoon had turned heavy with heat. I walked back to the shelter with the papers clutched against my chest, Grace's attorney card in my pocket. And for the first time since the motel key wouldn't turn, I felt something other than fear. I felt ready. Catherine Price's office didn't look like a law office. It looked like someone's grandmother's living room, if that grandmother had excellent taste and 3 law degrees on the wall. Soft furniture, real plants, a painting of the Sierra Nevada at sunset. The receptionist offered me tea. I almost cried at the kindness of it. Catherine was 50 maybe, with grey threading through her black hair, and the kind of posture that said she'd been fighting battles her whole life and intended to win this one too. She shook my hand firmly and gestured to a chair that was exactly the right height. "Grace called me," she said. "Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about the motel, the evaluation that found nothing wrong, Jeffrey never coming back, the changed locks, Patricia's pitying face, the shelter, the bank, the forged signature, $48,000 gone. Catherine took notes on a yellow legal pad, her handwriting quick and precise. She didn't interrupt, didn't tell me to slow down or back up or explain again. She just listened, like listening was her job, which I suppose it was. When I finished, she set down her pen. "Mrs. Whitmore, what your son did is criminal elder abuse, financial exploitation, forgery, possibly identity theft. Nevada has strong protections for senior financial abuse, and we can pursue both civil and criminal charges." The words should have made me feel better. They just made me tired. "I don't have money for an attorney," I said quietly. "You do now." Catherine pulled out a form. "I take these cases pro bono through the Silver State Elder Justice Project. Grace is on our board. She's already made the referral." "This won't cost you anything." I looked at her. This woman I'd met 15 minutes ago, who was offering to fight for me when my own son had tried to erase me. "Why?" I asked. She smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "Because 6 years ago, my mother called me from a gas station in Sparks. She'd driven herself there in her nightgown because my brother had changed the locks on her house, and told her she needed to move into memory care. There was nothing wrong with her memory. He just wanted her house. Silence held in the space between us. What happened? I asked. We got her house back. He pleaded guilty, served 2 years. My mother lived in that house until she died last April at 89. On her terms. Catherine opened a folder and pulled out another form. Here's what we're going to do. First, we file for emergency injunctive relief to prevent the sale of your house. Second, we get you a forensic document examiner to prove the signature is forged. Third, we file a police report for elder abuse and fraud. Fourth, we petition for a competency evaluation to prove you're not incapacitated. And fifth, she looked at me steadily, we get you your house back. My throat was too tight to speak. How long? I managed. 2 weeks for the injunction hearing, if we move fast. 2 months for the full case. Maybe 3. It depends on whether he fights or folds. He'll fight, I said. He needs the money. Then we'll fight harder. Catherine stood up. You'll need somewhere to stay that's not a shelter. I know a woman who runs transitional housing for seniors in situations like yours. It's through a non-profit. Clean rooms, private bathrooms, meals included. Can you be ready to move in tomorrow? Tomorrow. A room that wasn't a cot in a shelter. Yes, I said. Catherine made a phone call while I sat in the comfortable chair and watched the Sierra Nevada painting on the wall. I'd been to Lake Tahoe once with Robert, back before Jeffrey was born. We'd saved for months to afford the hotel. We'd walked along the shore holding hands and talked about the children we'd have and the life we'd build and all the years ahead of us. We'd had 43 years. That should have been enough. But Jeffrey had taken the last 8 of those years and hollowed them out, taken my money and my autonomy and my dignity. And he'd done it so slowly I hadn't noticed until I was standing in a law office with nothing left but my anger and my spine. Catherine hung up the phone. You're in. 342 West 7th Street, Apartment 6. Patricia Russo runs it. She's expecting you at 3. She wrote the address on a card and handed it to me. There's a small kitchen, a bed, a bathroom. Stay as long as you need. Thank you, I said, and the words weren't big enough, but they were all I had. One more thing. Catherine pulled an envelope from her desk drawer. Emergency fund, $500 for food, supplies, whatever you need. You'll pay it back when we win. I stared at the envelope. $500. More money than I'd held in a week. When we win, I repeated. When? Catherine said firmly. Now let's file these papers. The courthouse was 4 blocks away. We walked together, Catherine carrying her briefcase, me carrying my folder of evidence. The afternoon heat had broken, and the air smelled like rain coming. At the courthouse, Catherine filed her emergency motion. The clerk stamped it with a date, June 14th, 9 days away. 9 days until a judge would decide whether Jeffrey could sell my house out from under me. What if the judge says no? I asked on the steps outside. Then we appeal. But, Margaret, you have documentation of the forgery, testimony from a notary, bank records showing suspicious activity, and no history of cognitive decline. The judge will grant the injunction. Trust me. Trust. I trusted Geoffrey, and look where that had gotten me. But Catherine wasn't Geoffrey. At 3 o'clock, I stood in front of 342 West 7th Street. It was a converted Victorian house painted yellow, with a small garden in front where someone had planted roses. Real roses, not the climbers I had at my house, but the kind that bloomed in June and filled the air with scent. Patricia Russo met me at the door. She was 60, maybe, with kind eyes and efficient hands. She showed me to apartment 6, a small room on the second floor with a twin bed, a desk, a dresser, and a bathroom all my own. The window looked out over the rose garden. Towels are in the closet, Patricia said. Kitchen is shared, down the hall. Dinner is at 6 if you want it. No pressure. She left me alone. I set my overnight bag on the bed, the same bag I'd packed a week ago for an afternoon evaluation. Then I sat down in the chair by the window and looked at the roses and cried for the first time since the motel key wouldn't turn. I cried for everything I'd lost. I cried for the years I'd spent getting smaller. I cried for Robert and for the daughter who'd never grown up and for the son who'd tried to erase me. I cried until my ribs hurt and my eyes burned and my throat was raw. Then I stopped crying, washed my face in the small bathroom sink and went down to dinner. The forensic document examiner's office smelled like old paper and new technology. Dr. Raymond Webb was 72, retired from the FBI, with hands that moved over documents like a musician's hands over keys. He set my signature from the will beside the signature on the power of attorney. Then he pulled out a magnifying glass, then a microscope, then a computer with software that measured angles and pressure and patterns I didn't understand. After 20 minutes, he looked up. Forgery, he said simply. Traced, most likely. You can see where the pen hesitated here and here. Real signatures flow. This one stutters. Catherine took notes. I just stared at the two signatures side by side, my real one, my son's fake one. Can you testify to this? Catherine asked. In my sleep, Dr. Webb said. Mrs. Whitmore, your son isn't very good at forgery. He tried, but it's obvious once you know what to look for. Not very good. Geoffrey hadn't even been good at stealing from me. Outside, the June afternoon had turned golden. Catherine drove me back to the transitional house in her practical Honda. Classical music playing softly on the radio. You okay? She asked at a red light. I don't know, I said honestly. I keep thinking about all the times he asked for money, all the times I said yes. If I'd said no earlier, Margaret, Catherine's voice was firm, you're not responsible for your son choosing to commit fraud. You were being a mother, he was being a criminal. The light turned green. When we pulled up to the transitional house, Catherine handed me a folder. Police report is filed. Injunction hearing is in 5 days. Dr. Webb's report will be ready tomorrow. We're moving fast. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me. Just keep being angry. I watched her drive away, then turned toward the house. The roses in the front garden had opened more since yesterday. They were old roses, the kind that smell like roses used to smell before everything got bred for size instead of scent. Inside, Patricia was in the kitchen, making dinner. She looked up when I came in. "Margaret, there's a woman asking for you. Says she's your daughter-in-law." My stomach dropped. Diane. She was standing in the small living room by the piano, holding her purse with both hands. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. When she saw me, something crumpled in her face. "Margaret, I didn't know," she said. "I swear, I didn't know." I stood very still. Didn't know what? About the motel, the locks, the power of attorney. I thought... Her voice broke. "Jeff told me you'd agreed to the evaluation, that you were okay with transitioning to assisted living. I didn't know he'd left you there. I didn't know he'd forged..." She stopped, started again. "I just found out 2 days ago when the realtor called to schedule a showing." "A showing? He's selling my house," I said flatly. "There's an open house on Sunday." Diane's hands twisted on her purse. "I told him to stop. I told him this was wrong. He said it was too late. The papers were filed. You'd signed everything. But you didn't sign anything, did you? No. Oh, God." She sat down heavily on the piano bench. "Margaret, I'm so sorry. I should have questioned. I should have checked. But he said you'd forgotten signing it, that your memory was going, and I believed him." I could hear Patricia in the kitchen, moving carefully, giving us privacy but staying close enough to intervene if needed. "Where is Geoffrey now?" I asked. "At the house. He's there every day, directing the staging. The realtor brought in furniture, new curtains. They've packed up all your things into boxes in the garage." My things boxed up, like I was already dead. "I need to see it," I said. Diane looked up. "What?" "I need to see my house, what they've done to it. Margaret, I don't think take me there. Now." Something in my voice made her stand up. We drove in silence through streets I'd known for 42 years. Every corner, every tree, every crack in the pavement was familiar. Diane's hands were tight on the wheel. When we turned onto Sycamore Drive, I saw it. My house. There was a sign in the front yard. "For sale, open house Sunday 1 to 4 p.m. The rose bushes I'd planted were bloomed out, bright red against the white siding. The porch swing where Robert and I had sat 1,000 summer evenings was still there. But there was a different mat by the front door, different curtains in the window. "They're inside now," Diane said quietly, doing final touches. "Park across the street." She did. We sat in her car and watched through the front window. I could see people moving inside. A woman in a business suit carrying a clipboard, someone adjusting a lamp, and Geoffrey, my son, pointing at something, directing the transformation of my life into a sellable property. He looked tired, thinner than I remembered, older. He looked like a stranger. "I'm testifying against him," Diane said suddenly, "at the hearing. Catherine contacted me. I said yes." I turned to look at her. "Why?" Because what he did is wrong, and because Emma keeps asking where you are. She's 15, Margaret. She knows something's off. She misses you. Emma, my granddaughter. Piano recitals and Christmas mornings, and the way she'd always asked me to braid her hair, even though I wasn't very good at it. Does she know? I asked. No. Jeff told her you moved, that you needed more help, but she's not stupid. She asked me yesterday if Grandma was okay. I didn't know what to tell her. Tell her the truth, I said. Tell her I'm fighting. We sat there for another 10 minutes, watching the house get ready for strangers to walk through it and imagine their lives in my space. Then Diane started the car. I'm divorcing him, she said as she pulled away. Whatever happens in court, I can't. She stopped. I can't be married to someone who would do this. She dropped me at the transitional house just as the sun was setting. I stood on the sidewalk and watched her drive away, then turned and walked inside. Patricia had saved me a plate. Chicken, rice, green beans. I sat at the small kitchen table and ate slowly, tasting nothing. In 5 days, a judge would decide whether Geoffrey could sell my house. In my pocket was Dr. Webb's preliminary report. Forgery confirmed. On Sunday, strangers would walk through my living room and admire the staging, and never know that every box in the garage held pieces of a life that had been stolen. I finished my dinner, washed my plate, and went upstairs to my small room. Through the window, the roses in the garden were closing for the night, petals folding inward. I sat in the chair and did what I'd been doing every night since this started. I made lists. The competency evaluation took place on Thursday morning in a sterile office that smelled like coffee and anxiety. Dr. Sarah Kim was 45, clinical psychologist, with a gentle voice and merciless questions. She asked me to count backward, remember words, solve problems, explain proverbs. She asked about my childhood, my marriage, my daughter's death, my husband's death, my son. That part was hardest. How would you describe your relationship with Geoffrey? She asked. I thought about the toddler who'd hidden behind my skirt on his first day of kindergarten, the teenager who'd called me after his first heartbreak, the young father who'd brought Emma to my house every Sunday for brunch and let her eat too many pancakes. He was my son, I said finally. Now I don't know what he is. Dr. Kim made a note. Tell me what happened at the motel. So I told her. Again, the same story I'd told Catherine, Gloria, the police. It didn't get easier with repetition. It got sharper. After 2 hours, Dr. Kim set down her pen. Mrs. Whitmore, I'll have my written report tomorrow, but I can tell you now there is absolutely nothing wrong with your cognition, memory, or decision-making capacity. You are completely competent. What was done to you was not protection, it was abuse. I nodded. My throat was too tight for words. That afternoon, Catherine called. The report is perfect. Dr. Kim is listing it as no cognitive impairment whatsoever and clear evidence of elder exploitation. The judge will see this before the hearing. The hearing was 2 days away. Saturday morning, I woke to rain. Not the gentle desert rain that dries before it hits the ground, but real rain, the kind that comes from the mountains and means something. I stood at my window and watched water run down the glass and blur the roses below. There was a knock at my door. "Come in," I said, expecting Patricia with breakfast. It was Emma. My granddaughter stood in the doorway in jeans and a raincoat, 15 years old, with Robert's eyes and Geoffrey's stubborn chin. She was crying. "Grandma," she said, "Dad said you didn't want to see me." I opened my arms and she crashed into me. All sharp elbows and wet jacket and shampoo that smelled like strawberries. She was taller than me now. When had that happened? "Your father lied," I said into her hair. "I always want to see you." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Mum told me what he did about the house and the money and the motel. Grandma, is it true? Yes. Why would he do that? Why?" The question I'd been asking myself for 2 weeks, the question that had no good answer. "I don't know, sweetheart. People do terrible things sometimes, even people we love." Emma sank down on my bed. "He said you were sick, that you needed help, but you're not sick." "No, Mum's divorcing him. I know. I'm so mad at him." Her voice broke. "How could he do that to you? You're his mum." I sat beside her. Outside, the rain kept falling. "Emma, listen to me. What your father did doesn't change who you are. You're going to be okay. Your mum is going to make sure you're okay. But what about you?" "I'm going to be okay too." I took her hand. "There's a hearing on Monday. A judge is going to look at all the evidence and give me my house back." "Can I come?" "To the hearing?" "You don't have to. I want to. I want to tell the judge what Dad did was wrong." I looked at this girl who'd eaten pancakes at my table every Sunday for 15 years, who'd practiced piano in my living room, who'd fallen asleep on my couch during movie nights, who was choosing to stand with me when it would have been easier to stay silent. "Okay," I said. "You can come." She hugged me again, fierce and quick, then pulled something from her pocket. A flash drive. "Mum said to give you this. It's emails between Dad and the realtor about selling the house. He thought she deleted them, but she saved everything. Evidence. Diane had given us evidence." Emma left an hour later. I walked her downstairs and watched through the window as she got into Diane's car. They drove away through the rain. That evening, I sat at the small desk in my room and wrote something I hadn't written in 8 years. A letter. Not to Geoffrey, not to anyone specific, just words I needed to say out loud, even if only on paper. I am 74 years old. I taught 4th grade for 32 years. I raised a son and buried a daughter. I was married for 41 years to a man who taught me that love is quieter than anger and longer than loss. My son tried to erase me. He almost succeeded. But I am still here. I am not confused. I am not incompetent. I am not a burden or a problem to be managed. I am a person who fought for her life, and I'm not done fighting yet. I folded the letter and put it in the pocket of the dress I'd wear to court. Blue cotton, the one Robert always said made my eyes look grey instead of brown. I'd packed it for the afternoon evaluation because I'd wanted to look nice for my son. I'd wear it for myself now. Sunday came, the open house. I didn't go. I couldn't watch strangers walk through my house pretending they might buy it, pretending my life was just square footage and good bones and natural light. Instead, I went to the library. I researched Nevada elder abuse laws, I read case precedents, I made more lists. At 4 p.m, Catherine called. The open house is over. 17 groups came through, 3 are interested. But Margaret, we're going to stop this tomorrow. The judge will grant the injunction, I promise you. I believed her. I had to believe her. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the narrow bed and listened to rain on the roof and thought about Monday morning, about walking into a courtroom, about facing my son, about reclaiming my name. The Carson City Courthouse was built in 1937, grey stone with high windows that let in hard morning light. Catherine met me on the steps at 8:30. Emma and Diane were already inside, sitting in the back row. "Ready?" Catherine asked. "No," I said, "but let's go anyway." Courtroom 3 was smaller than I'd expected. Wood panelling, American flag, the judge's bench higher than everything else, like judgment itself looking down. Catherine guided me to a table on the left. I set my purse down carefully. Geoffrey sat at the table on the right. Our eyes met across the courtroom. He looked away first. His lawyer was young, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that came from never having lost anything important. He had a briefcase open on the table, papers spread out like battle formations. The bailiff called us to order. "All rise. The Honourable Judge Martinez presiding." Judge Elena Martinez was 60, sharp-eyed, with silver hair pulled back and the air of someone who'd heard every lie in the world twice. She sat down, looked at both tables and said, "Let's proceed." Catherine stood. "Your Honour, we're here on an emergency motion for injunctive relief. Mrs. Margaret Whitmore seeks to prevent the sale of her property located at 2847 Sycamore Drive, which is scheduled to close escrow in 10 days. The property was transferred to her son, Geoffrey Whitmore, through a fraudulent power of attorney that Mrs. Whitmore never signed." Geoffrey's lawyer stood. "Your Honour, my client acted in good faith based on a properly executed power of attorney that was notarized. We have forensic evidence that the signature was forged," Catherine cut in. She passed a folder to the bailiff. "Dr. Raymond Webb, retired FBI document examiner. His report is in your hands. The signature is demonstrably fraudulent." Judge Martinez opened the folder, read for a moment. Her expression didn't change. "Counsellor," she said to Geoffrey's lawyer, "how do you explain this?" "Your Honour, my client believed I didn't ask what your client believed. I asked how you explain forensic evidence of forgery." Silence, Catherine continued. "We also have testimony from Grace Chen, the notary, who states she never witnessed Mrs. Whitmore sign this document. We have bank records showing my client's son systematically drained her accounts. We have psychological evaluation from Dr. Sarah Kim confirming Mrs. Whitmore has no cognitive impairment. And we have emails between Mr. Whitmore and the realtor proving he knew his mother hadn't consented to the sale." She handed over the flash drive. "Those are privileged communications," Geoffrey's lawyer said quickly. "They were provided by Mr. Whitmore's wife, Catherine said calmly, who has filed for divorce and is cooperating with this case. Judge Martinez looked at Geoffrey. Mr. Whitmore, did you forge your mother's signature? Geoffrey's lawyer leaned over, whispered something. Mr. Whitmore, the judge repeated, answer the question. Geoffrey stood slowly. Your Honour, my mother was having memory problems. I was trying to protect her assets. Did you forge her signature? She was forgetting things, Mr. Whitmore. The judge's voice was steel. Did you obtain your mother's signature through her own hand, or did you sign her name yourself? The courtroom was completely silent. I signed it, Geoffrey said finally. His voice was barely audible. But she would have signed it if I'd asked. She was confused. Dr. Kim's evaluation states your mother has no cognitive impairment, none. So when you say she was confused, what you mean is that she refused to give you what you wanted. Geoffrey didn't answer. Judge Martinez looked at me for the first time. Mrs. Whitmore, would you like to make a statement? Catherine nodded at me. I stood up. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat on the table. Your Honour, I said. My voice sounded strange in the formal space. Geoffrey is my son. I love him. But what he did wasn't love. He abandoned me in a motel with no money, no identification, no way home. He changed my locks. He told my neighbours I'd moved to assisted living. He transferred $48,000, everything my husband and I saved in 43 years of marriage. He forged my name. He tried to sell my house, and he did all of this because he wanted my money and didn't want to wait for me to die. My voice broke on the last word, but I kept going. I'm 74 years old. I'm not senile. I'm not incompetent. I'm not a problem to be solved. I'm a person, and I'm asking you to give me back my life. I sat down. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Judge Martinez looked at Geoffrey for a long moment. Then she looked at his lawyer. Then she looked at her papers. The injunction is granted, she said. The sale is halted immediately. The property transfer is voided pending full investigation. Mr. Whitmore, you are ordered to surrender all keys, access codes and documents related to 2847 Sycamore Drive within 24 hours. You are also ordered to stay at least 500 feet from Mrs. Whitmore and her residences. A criminal referral will be filed with the District Attorney's Office regarding the forged power of attorney, elder abuse, and financial exploitation. She looked at Geoffrey again. Mr. Whitmore, your mother is 74 years old. She taught school for 3 decades. She raised you, and you repaid her by attempting to steal her home while she was alive to see it. I find your actions reprehensible. You should be ashamed. Geoffrey's face was white. This hearing is adjourned, Judge Martinez said. She stood up and left. Catherine put her hand on my arm. We won. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, could barely breathe. We won. Behind me, I heard Emma crying. Diane was holding her. They came forward, and Emma hugged me hard, still crying. I'm so proud of you, Grandma, she whispered. Across the courtroom, Geoffrey was gathering his papers. His lawyer looked furious. I watched my son walk toward the door without looking back. Just before he reached it, he turned. Our eyes met one more time. I didn't look away, he did. Then he was gone. The locksmith came on Tuesday afternoon. His name was Tom Garcia, and he'd changed locks in Carson City for 30 years. He worked quickly, efficiently, installing new deadbolts on the front door, the back door, the garage. "Good locks," he said when he finished. "Nobody's getting in without your say-so." He handed me 3 keys on a new ring. I paid him in cash, money from Catherine's emergency fund. Then I stood alone on my front porch and looked at my house. My house. The for sale sign was gone. The staging furniture had been removed by the realtor that morning, her face carefully neutral as she supervised the movers. My own furniture was still in boxes in the garage, but that was okay. I could unpack slowly. I had time now. I slid the new key into the new lock. It turned smoothly. Inside, the house felt strange and familiar at once. Empty rooms echoed. The walls were the same colour Robert and I had painted them 20 years ago, soft yellow, like early morning light, but it smelled different, like strangers. I opened every window. In the kitchen, I found one box labelled China Fragile in Geoffrey's handwriting. I opened it carefully. Inside was my grandmother's china, the set she'd brought from Poland in 1948. 14 place settings. We'd only ever used it for holidays. I took out one plate, cream-coloured, with tiny blue flowers around the rim. I could remember my grandmother's hands washing these plates at the sink, her voice humming songs in a language I didn't understand. I washed the plate in my own sink, dried it, set it on the counter where I could see it. Then I made tea and sat at my empty kitchen table and drank from my grandmother's china because it was Tuesday afternoon and I was home and I could. The next morning, I changed my will. Catherine drew up the new documents. Geoffrey was explicitly removed. Everything would go to Emma, held in trust until she was 25. I signed it in front of witnesses, my real signature, no one forging it. "Are you sure?" Catherine asked gently. "He's still your son." "He's still my son," I agreed. "But this is still my choice." That afternoon I called Emma. She answered on the second ring. "Can you come over Saturday?" I asked. "I need help unpacking, and I thought maybe we could make pancakes, if you want." "Yes," she said immediately. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Always. Are you okay? Like, really okay?" I looked around my kitchen, at the empty table, the grandmother's plate on the counter, the boxes still waiting, the windows letting in light. "I'm getting there," I said. Saturday morning, Emma arrived with Diane. We spent 4 hours unpacking boxes. My books went back on the shelves. Robert's photograph returned to the mantel. The grandmother's china was carefully placed in the cabinet with the glass doors. Emma found a box labelled Geoffrey Childhood. I looked inside. Report cards, art projects, photos, a macaroni necklace he'd made me for Mother's Day when he was 6. "Do you want to keep it?" Emma asked quietly. I thought about that for a long time. Yes, I said finally. He was my son before he became someone I don't recognize. I can keep the memory of who he was without forgiving what he did. I put the box in the back of my closet. That night, after Emma and Diane left, I sat on my porch swing and watched the sunset. The rose bushes were in full bloom now, red and perfect. A neighbour I didn't know walked by and waved. I waved back. My phone rang. A new phone, my own number restored. It was Patricia from the transitional house. Margaret, there's a woman here, 72. Her daughter emptied her bank account and moved her belongings out while she was hospitalized. She has nowhere to go. Does she need somewhere to stay? I asked. We're full. I was wondering, you've been through this. Would you be willing to talk to her? Tell her it gets better. I thought about the motel key that wouldn't turn, the neighbour's pitying face, the first night in the shelter, the long walk to the bank, the courtroom. Yes, I said. Give her my number. Tell her to call me. Thank you, Margaret. After we hung up, I sat in the growing dark and thought about the woman I'd been 2 months ago. Small and getting smaller, invisible in my own life, erased by someone who was supposed to love me. I wasn't that woman anymore. I'd fought for my name, my house, my money, my story. I'd stood in a courtroom and said I'm a person. I'd watched my son walk away, and I hadn't looked away first. I'd survived, and now I'd help someone else survive too. The sunset faded to purple, then to dark. Inside my house, lights came on in windows. My lights, my windows, my house. I was 74 years old. I'd lost a son, but found myself. And I was finally, peacefully home.